Welcome to That Business Show 2.0 with your host, Jamie Maloney, where business becomes show business. Today we're going to be talking about ghosts and monsters with Kullstroem. She is the author of Drawn to the Dark, and she has recently traveled the globe and visited various countries and festivals, all to seek out what is behind some of these cultures and some of these festivals that are centered around this mystique. So Chris, welcome to the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you went from basically house to house, first off, using crowd surfing. I got that right? I want to make sure I don't confuse that with crowdfunding. Couch surfing. There you go. That's what I'm saying. I'm so used to saying crowdfunding on this show. Yeah. Couch surfing. I'm going to confuse those two throughout this discussion, I promise you, because that's the first person on this program that has ever couch surfed. What is couch surfing?
Oh, well, couch surfing is a great organization. People invite travelers to stay with them in their home, either on their couch or in a spare bedroom. And the person is coming to that area for any number of reasons, and the person hosting them usually goes out with them to do whatever they came there to do. So in my circumstance, I wrote to the people, said, I'm going to your town because there's a festival I want to look at, festival based on monsters. I'm writing a book about it. And they said, wow, that sounds great. You're welcome to stay with me. And they did the festival or event with me.
And so couch surfing, you said an organization. Is this something that has, people that are overseeing this whole operation? Because to me, it seems kind of risky going in from house to house.
Oh, well, the benefit of it is everybody has a reference. So after you stay with somebody or somebody stays with you, you leave them a reference so that, like if I was going to stay with you, the people who had stayed with you in the past would have left you a reference. So I could say, oh, Jamie's a good guy. All these people.
There's always that first one, though, right?
That's right.
So I give you compliments for having the will to travel the country through couch surfing. To me, I'd be afraid of whose house I'm staying in. I don't know who this person is, but you had a great experience. It looks like.
Absolutely. There's a deep layer of trust in couch surfing, and it's all over the world.
And so, does this go on in every single town across America, across the countries? Could I look this up tonight?
Absolutely. There are couch surfing hosts in Antarctica. They're everywhere.
Antarctica. I didn't think there's anybody living in Antarctica, right? It's all scientific establishments down there, correct?
Right.
But you get a free place to stay then. How does that work? Is there any charges involved in this?
Nope.
No, nothing. So you just go down there. I guess there's a point of overstaying your welcome, though. How does that come into play?
Yeah. It's understood that you only stay 3 days unless the person invites you to stay longer.
Okay, so 3 days couch surfing across the country. Interesting enough. So you've did this to write your book, Drawn to the Dark, and you're the author of 4 books, and this book is about the different cultures as they pertain to the mystique of monsters and ghosts and all of those things. So talk to me first off about your background. Have you always had a fascination with monsters?
Yes, I've always loved Halloween, horror films, the haunted attraction industry overall. And so for the 3 years before I did this project, I was in grad school, and each summer I would spend a month traveling to different countries to see what their scare attractions were like and how they compared to ours, which are primarily based on Halloween. And then I would go to a haunted attraction conference, speak to people who run and work at those haunts.
Now, I want to be clear that this book it's not about paranormal or demonic possessions or anything like this. This is just about festival, about theater, about people that, celebrate the dark side, if you will, but in a fun way that brings the community together, correct?
Exactly. It's all about theater, about people portraying the monstrous and how people around the world respond to that.
Now, what is your background with this? Did you grow up just a lover of monsters? Are you spiritual in the sense that you see things like that? Or is it just that you've always been enamored by the culture?
By the culture, by the theatrics, by the performance. Yeah.
I can remember one of my earliest memories was of a monster pulling me under the bed, and I was telling this story just the other day. I used to, as a kid, and this is my earliest childhood memory of sleeping on the bed, and I would lay my arm over the side of the bed and woke up in the middle of the night and some monster was pulling me underneath of my bed, and I was screaming for my parents, and they just told me to shut up and go back to bed. To this day, I will not sleep with my arm hanging over the bed, though. I kid you not. And I'm not somebody who's scared of the dark or anything like that, but there's something about hanging my hand over the bed that still frightens me to this day.
I used to have the same fear, and then one day I told myself, okay, if a kid really had his arm pulled off and under the bed, or if he was dragged under the bed, it'd be in the news.
It would. And that nightmare that I had, my parents said they never heard anything, and I was just, having a nightmare. But it's so ingrained ingrained in us as a kid to be, afraid of the monster, afraid of what's in the closet. It's so much a part of our culture. In these other countries, how much of that is part of their culture?
It seems to be a universal theme. Monsters, pretty much everywhere you go, represent things that we should be afraid of, and so that's what they tend to enact. Like one of the festivals in Japan, the creatures specifically represent evils and misfortune, and that's the Oni demon that is part of the Setsuban festival, and they hold that every year to celebrate the new year. And so this demon comes out called the Oni, and they're supposed to represent all these evils, and the people throw beans at the Oni, casting them away, and that's their hope of casting away all bad things from entering the new year.
Interesting. And so I guess our cultural festival, will be Halloween. Do we have other festivals? I guess we don't, and maybe regional in that manner, but Halloween is our festival for the dark side, I guess, if you will. Is there other festivals in other countries that are comparable to Halloween?
Not comparable to Halloween, no, because it's so much a party aspect here. I guess the closest would be Day of the Dead in Mexico, and that's where the book actually starts out. And of course that's different because that's very much based on personal belief that the ancestors are returning and that you're honoring them by building altars and visiting the graves. But in addition to that, it's a huge party that takes over entire towns with parades and sand art and special breads and foods that are all shaped like skulls and shrouds and stuff like that. So it's also a way of accepting that, yes, death is a natural part of life. And
Dia de los Muertos or something. Am I saying that right? It's one of the Spanish phrases and words that I know. And I did read that chapter in your book. That was your first stop along the way. You met a number of people, and it's all about bringing community together. And you made some good friends out of it too.
Absolutely. That's another benefit of couch surfing is you meet so many people and they're friends for life.
Now, in our country, Halloween, what is the origin of our own festival? Are you aware of how Halloween came about?
Yep, that stems from the ancient Celts back in Ireland when they would celebrate the Lord of the Dead, and they'd kind of worship the Lord of the Dead and also kind of remember also that death comes to us all in the way that Day of the Dead does. And that evolved throughout the years by bonfires that you can still see today. They would leave out offerings by the door, both to have the negative spirits take the offerings and leave them alone, but also to welcome the spirits back whom they did love. Is
that the origin of the candy then, I guess? Is that why we have candy at Halloween?
That actually goes a little bit further once the Catholic Church took over and made Samhain, which is what the ancient Celts celebrated, into All Saints' Day. Then the poor began going door to door asking for food and drink in exchange for saying prayers for anyone who died in that household.
Yeah, interesting. And again, your book, Drawn to the Dark, it's available in Barnes & Nobles, of course, as well as on Amazon. Now, this book, when you had the idea, did your publisher fund you to be able to take time off from work and go do this? Was this on your own dime? How does somebody get to travel the globe and write a book? Because that's something I'd like to do.
They get to by making it happen. I actually tried to raise money through
crowdfunding?
Not crowdfunding, Kickstarter.
Kickstarter, which is a form of crowdfunding, yes. Okay.
And that failed because you have to reach your goal in order to receive those funds. And I didn't. And I said, well, I don't care, I'm doing it anyway. I had saved up the past few years, so I had a small nest egg. So I gave my notice at work, gave up my apartment, and planned to travel for a year just using my own dime. And I did that.
Wow, incredible. And what was your background? What is your profession outside of being an author?
At the time, I was in human resources.
Human resources. And today, have you managed to make a living on writing yet, or is that still the passion that you'd like to pursue?
I do it strictly for the passion and to teach people about life through the dark tourism. But I also teach English.
English, okay, and hence being a writer. I myself love to write. It's in my back of my head to one day write a few novels myself. But my podcast / radio show has been my creative outlet for the last 4 years, and many blog posts on top of that. But got some novel ideas in the back of my head. I got 2 unfinished books myself. So I commend you for having the power to finish 4 books now.
Thank
4
you.
books and everything. So you said 2 of them are on monsters and and ghosts and things like that. Your other books, what are they about?
The first three, they're all on my website, monstersandbooks.com, are about Halloween specifically, different ways you can celebrate Halloween, and different types of parties you can throw at your house that almost make your party like a haunted attraction experience.
Wow, incredible. And what's on the horizon? What's your next book idea? Is it going to be another monster-themed book, or are you going to branch off into other avenues? What is on the horizon for you?
Oh, everything on the horizon is themed around monsters. But the book that I'm working on now is based on travels I did last October, and I went up the eastern side of the U.S. and into the Midwest, looking at haunted attractions, and it will convey how those attractions actually reflect elements of Halloween through the ages.
So I remember growing up in the 80s, and I was a fan of all the different horror films. I was a big Jason and Freddy Krueger fan, and due in part because my parents said I couldn't watch him. So maybe that was part of it. Were you a horror film person yourself? Who were your childhood, I wouldn't say idols, but your fascinations?
Freddy Krueger.
Freddy Krueger. What is it about Freddy Krueger that people just was attracted to? Certainly wasn't that red sweater, was it?
It could have been for some people.
I had one of those, by the way. I bought one unknowingly, and people made fun of me because I had the Freddy Krueger sweater.
That's awesome. But no, I liked him, and I think a lot of people do, because he's hilarious as well as scary. He's
Yes.
always cracking jokes.
Yes, yes. And him and Jason have kind of transcended generations to this day. They're still putting out Freddy Krueger and Jason films. They even put them in the film together where I think Jason won that battle, I think is what it was, with Freddy winking at the end that he was still alive as he carried him off, carried his head off. That's how that one ended, nonetheless. So, but we haven't had a great horror character come along in this generation. Who or can you correct me on that? Has there been any great horror characters over this last generation?
I think Samara from The Ring is way up there.
You think that right? You think Samara is really replacing the Freddy Kruegers and the Jasons and the Ray? It's interesting.
Well, the reason I say that is because a lot of haunted attractions use that character,
Right.
and she always gets a huge scare.
Right. And we've seen a lot built around the Purge, but there's no central character in the Purge. So, got to take a break here. Currently talking to Chris Kullstroem. She is the author of Drawn to the Dark, available in storefronts and Barnes & Noble as well on Amazon. Learn more at the website monstersandbooks.com. Again, monstersandbooks.com. When we come back for the break, we'll go into a little bit more of her trip and some of the different cultural festivals that she saw during her couch surfing trip. I keep wanting to say crowdfunding for some
That's
reason.
okay.
I'm so used to saying that on this program. Couch surfing trip. So again, you're listening to That Business Show 2.0 with your host, Jamie Maloney, where business becomes show business.
Hi, welcome to Yeager's. We just want to take a minute and show you what we're all about. At Yeager's, our primary business is hardwood flooring, although we are remodelers for kitchen, bath, and general construction. We operate a fleet of shop-at-home vans that have all the flooring type products: hardwood flooring, laminate flooring, tiles, stone, what have you. So we're able to come out first with products in our vehicles and take a look at the setting, how the colors will work, and then to be able to come up with some options and ideas for you. If that's not good enough, we have a large distribution center that we inventory product and have a nice display area.
And welcome back to That Business Show 2.0. I'm Jamie Maloney, your host, with new episodes each weekday morning, 9 a.m. on thatbusinessnetwork.com. Also, find us on iTunes and subscribe. Leave a review. It helps the show grow. It helps the message get out to more and more people that come onto this program. So again, thatbusinessshow.com for more information, or thatbusinessnetwork.com for more information. Thatbusinessshow.com also houses all the past shows of this program. Today we're talking with Kullstroem. She is the writer and author of the book Drawn to the Dark, and you can learn more about this also at her website monstersandbooks.com. So you started out in Mexico, Dia de los Muertos. Where did you go from there?
From there, I went to Austria, Salzburg, because they have an entire month-long celebration about the Krampus demon.
Krampus, there's a movie about that too, right?
Yes.
I've not seen that, so now I might have to check this out. What is the Krampus demon?
Well, the Krampus movie is very good, but it's not really based on the actual legend. The legend is that this huge demon, imposing demon, accompanied St. Nicholas, and as St. Nicholas would give candy and treats to good little boys and girls, Krampus would beat them, throw them in his sack, and steal them away.
So he was the anti-Santa Claus.
Absolutely, anti-St. Nicholas.
Anti-St. Nicholas, there we go, I got you there. And so they had a whole festival, and this was in Austria, you said?
Austria, yep.
So you go from Mexico to Austria, and how long did you stay there?
I was there for a month.
A month, and is the festival a month long? Or?
Yes.
Wow, so they dedicate a whole month to that. Incredible. From there, where did you go?
From there, I went to Italy. I went to Florence. I actually went to a few places before Florence, but in the book, it ends up in Florence because that's where Dante is from, who wrote the Divine Comedy. And so I wanted to explore Florence because I'm such a big fan of the poem, and because that poem Inferno, the first of three, actually shaped the way a lot of people perceived hell from that time.
Interesting. And so what was like the biggest takeaway from this entire trip? What did you learn that maybe wasn't a part of your persona before you took this trip?
I specifically left to look at the shows and how people portray characters and how others like to see those characters. But what surprised me the most was how much it is around the world that people are intrigued by these dark creatures, and they do like to share the experience with other people. Most of the people I stayed with didn't, many of them hadn't been to the festival for years, even though they grew up with it. So they were so excited that somebody was specifically coming all that way.
It's sort of like with us in the beach here. People come,
Yeah.
we want to know how many times you've been to the beach. I haven't been in a couple of years, to be honest with you. It's you're taking for granted the stuff that's right in your own backyard.
That's true.
You know, and so you were traveling to other countries and these festivals, and they're like, I don't really go to those festivals. So you see that same mentality in other areas too then.
Absolutely. And these characters like the Oni and the Krampus and the walking skeletons in Day of the Dead, people grow up with that, and sometimes they don't even realize how much of an impact it had on them growing up in that culture. And so to share that with somebody, you can really see that come out, how much it shaped them.
And so, in America, we have a one-day festival. We have Halloween. In Austria, or was it Italy that had the month-long festival?
Austria.
Austria had the month-long. Is it common for these festivals to take over the place over the course of weeks and months?
No, that was more specifically for Krampus because it was such a, I hate to say a commercialized thing, but it kind of was to some extent. But the shows were always free of charge, and they took place in the middle of town.
Right.
Entire groups of people would dress like Krampus and parade through the streets and actually attack people. And there would be thousands of people lined up to see this. And because they had grown up with it, they looked forward to it. It didn't matter if it was 10 degrees outside. They were so excited to see Krampus invade their town.
How did you see the different festivals evolve from country to country or region to region? Did they seem to kind of fit a pattern? Like in this continent, you saw this type of a character, or are they all derived from? Because I think myself, aren't all these characters in some way derived from some base religion, or are these just cultural things that have evolved through stories through the years?
Well, that was another interesting thing, in that no matter where you go, whether it's Japan or Mexico or Austria and different parts of the world, they have created these monsters based off what people should fear. And it's interesting how they look, the big eyes, the fangs, the horns, and how they playfully try to instill fear in people, and how people willingly let themselves get scared. So it seems to be an inherent part of human nature.
Are any of the monsters that we're familiar with universal, such as Count Dracula or the werewolf or some of these other well-known monsters in American culture? Did you see stories around Count Dracula and vampires in other countries?
Well, I spent 6 weeks in Transylvania, and that's another chapter in the book. And so, of course, a lot
But outside of Transylvania, is the vampire a common character in other cultures?
Not that I went specifically to see, no.
Okay, so, but what about like the werewolf or anything? So these are mostly then regional or country specific type of monsters. Everybody has their own spin, I guess, on the monster.
Yes, but because the United States was founded on people from around the world, of course, our creatures that we know and love today came from all over the place. But the only other places I saw like werewolves and vampires outside of Transylvania was when I went to haunted attractions, and they seem to have very similar characters like that.
Interesting. And so how many different countries or stops did you make along this entire trip?
11.
11 different,
countries.
so was that 11 different countries or within 11 different spots?
Yes,
11 different countries. Wow. And so we talked about you went to Mexico, to Austria, to Florence. Let's talk about another one of your stops. What was another one?
Transylvania. I bring that up again because it was my favorite.
What was it about Transylvania? I used to think that was a mythical place for a long time.
A lot of people still think.
Because I thought that was like the part of the vampire story that's where he lived and stuff.
Right, because that's where we know it from growing up. We just saw it in the movies, so
Right.
we assume, oh, it was fake. But no, it's a real place, and of course, Vlad Tepes, the infamous ruler.
Vlad the Impaler, right?
Vlad the Impaler.
Yes.
Yes. You can still go to see the ruins of some of his castles. And some of them, like Bran Castle, which was unfortunately just sold in the past year or two, at the time they were open, and the top floor was actually dedicated to vampire legends throughout the years, and how Bram Stoker based his character off Vlad Tepes.
Yeah, Vlad the Impaler or I should say, and the vampire. I mean, that's one of those situations where you can derive a monster directly from an actual historical figure. Are there other situations like that in our culture? Did the werewolf come from a certain person, or did something else come from? I can't make that distinction. I thought about that one night, and I could only think of the Vlad and the vampire. I don't know if you have an example that could educate me more.
I think the werewolf and the wolfman, as we know it today, stems from Hollywood.
Hollywood, yeah. So the Vlad the Impaler, he was responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths. Apparently, if you're doing your research on that person, he was quite the archaic ruler in his day. So Transylvania was the culture. Was there like a lot of vampire-themed restaurants and happenings there?
No, but I was expecting the same thing as maybe a stereotypical American who spent many a Halloween in Salem, Massachusetts, where you do see the themed gift shops and restaurants and tours all over the place. You go over there, even in the town of Bran, which is where Bran Castle is, there wasn't that. There was maybe a gift shop, there was a haunted attraction next to the castle, which I go into in the book. But other than that, it wasn't the commercialism that we have over here.
Well, I guess it's just a different culture. They're not as much worried about, the dollar from tourism as they are whatever it is in their country that they are more drawn to. So your book, again, Drawn to the Dark, available in bookstores at Barnes & Noble as well as on Amazon. Pick it up, monstersandbooks.com. After Transylvania, where did you go, or what's another place that you visited and can talk to us about?
Let's see. Well, before I went to Transylvania, I was in Hungary for a few weeks, and they had this big festival called the Bushoharas Carnival, and these were monsters based off a legend, the 16th century Battle of Mohacs. The people dressed up like monsters to scare away the Turks that were ruling their town.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long did that festival go on for?
That was a week.
A week, okay. And so that's what, 5, so we still got a handful of places. I'm trying to get through as many as I can during this discussion. After that, what's another place that you went?
Okay, after Transylvania, I went to Germany. They have a big festival based on Walpurgisnacht, and that comes from the story of Faust, when Faust was led up to the Brocken Mountain to be tempted by all these witches and devils that were congregating in magic and all sorts of evils. And so they celebrate that every year on April 30th throughout central Germany. And the festival I went to was on the Brocken Mountain. So I took the gondola lift up there and the whole 9 yards. And they had a laser show based around Faust, and people were dressed up as witches and devils.
Wow, incredible. To what degree does religion come into play with these beliefs? Is this something that has just evolved in their culture, or is it something that has derived from, the different religions in these areas?
Aside from Day of the Dead, which is based on a mixture of Catholicism and the religion that Catholicism took over in that area, religion actually didn't play much of a role. It was more stories, urban legends that continued to be passed down.
Of the different countries that you went to, which one had like the biggest cultural surroundings around monsters and identities, or monsters and ghosts? Is America still more enamored with that than the countries that you visited, or would you say there's other countries that are more enamored with that than America?
I'd say what America is enamored with is sensationalism and Hollywood and just making it into a big party.
Right.
And even though I saw aspects of that in other places, say the Japanese festivals all had the party element, we really take that into, not over the top in a bad way, but in a way that you don't see as much abroad.
Right, and well, we've gotten to a point in America where everything's been done and they keep trying to outdo. Is that the same in other cultures that you saw, or no?
I wouldn't say that they try to outdo as much as they try to improve and expand to make their show bigger and better.
So how many different continents did you visit altogether? You're obviously in North America, Europe. Did you go down into South America any?
No, but I did go to New Zealand.
New Zealand, okay.
And they have a great haunted attraction in the North Island and the South Island.
What was the big attraction down there?
The North Island was Spookers, and that's actually a haunted attraction that's open all year. And so I went with my host, who had only been once, and he was terrified of it, and actually quite terrified at the idea of going back.
Really?
So that is a really good chapter to read, because you get to experience the show through me, who is looking at it for the theatrics of it, and my host Joey, who is terrified the entire time.
So any of the stops or any of the stories or anything that you saw along this trip keep you up at night?
No.
Nothing that demonic or crazy or paranormal. It's just all culture, it's all theater, it's all fun. So nothing that burned an image inside your head is like, you wake up from it screaming at night then.
No.
Well, that's good. So it sounds like you had an amazing trip, produced a great work of art here, the book Drawn to the Dark, again available in Barnes & Noble as well as monstersandbooks.com and on Amazon. So Chris Kullstroem, thank you so much for being with me today on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And again, pick this book up, Barnes & Nobles or on Amazon.com, and learn more, monstersandbooks.com. So you've been listening to That Business Show 2.0. I'm your host, Jamie Maloney, where business becomes show business.